Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. Most men miss the exact moment when a woman decides she's done. Not because she's giving subtle signs, because she stops giving any signs at all. You're sitting there thinking everything's fine. Maybe a little quiet lately, but fine. And she's already mentally moved out. She's already run through the conversation where she leaves. She's already grieved the relationship you still think exists. The signs aren't what you think they are. This isn't about her texting less or cancelling plans. Those are symptoms. What's actually happening underneath is a complete psychological shift that most men don't understand until it's way too late. And once you see what that shift looks like from her perspective, you'll understand why so many breakups feel like they came out of nowhere. They didn't. You just weren't watching for the right thing. Let me show you the 3 signs that tell you she's already gone. And more importantly, what's actually happening in her mind when each one shows up. Sign 1. She stops explaining herself. This is the one most men completely misread. You think she's finally chilling out. She used to get upset about things and now she doesn't. She used to tell you when something bothered her and now she just says it's fine. You think you won. You didn't. You lost. When emotional needs go unmet over time, withdrawal becomes a protective mechanism. It's a way of preserving what little energy remains. This isn't her becoming more easygoing. This is her deciding that explaining how she feels is a waste of time because nothing changes when she does. Think about that for a second. She told you something mattered. You didn't adjust, she told you again. You adjusted for a week, maybe 2, then went back. She told you a 3rd time, and you got defensive about why you shouldn't have to change, so she stopped telling you. Not because it stopped mattering, because she decided you're not capable of hearing it. And here's what most men miss. When a woman stops fighting for what she needs, it's not peace, it's preparation. She's preparing to not need you anymore. She's recalibrating her expectations so low that your presence becomes optional. And that process, that quiet recalibration, is one of the most dangerous shifts that can happen in a relationship. From her side, it feels like self-preservation. She's tired. She's explained the same thing 4 different ways and nothing landed. So she stops explaining and starts observing. She watches to see if you'll notice on your own. And when you don't, when you just relax into the silence and assume everything's better now, that's the moment she knows for sure. You're not listening. You never were. Now here's the psychology behind this. When an anxiously attached partner feels emotionally threatened, they move toward their partner. The avoidant partner moves away, trying to regain emotional control. But what happens when the anxious partner stops moving toward? When they realize pursuit doesn't work, they don't become avoidant, they become done. And done doesn't look like anger. Done looks calm. Done looks like she's finally over whatever was bothering her. But what she's actually over is expecting you to show up differently. She's let go of the hope that you'll meet her halfway. And once that hope is gone, the relationship is running on fumes. Most men don't see this as a red flag because it feels like relief. She's not nagging anymore. She's not bringing up the same issues. But if you didn't fix the issue and she stopped bringing it up, you didn't win. She just stopped caring whether it gets fixed or not. And that distinction is everything. Sign 2. She builds a life that doesn't include you. This one sneaks up slowly. At first, it just looks like she's getting her own hobbies. She's spending more time with friends. She's taking a class or joining a gym or picking up something new. And you think, great, she's got her own thing. That's healthy. It is healthy. Until you realize you're not invited. Not because she's hiding it. Because she genuinely doesn't think to include you anymore. A woman who's withdrawn might form new routines and friendships that her partner knows nothing about. Not because she's protecting private time. Because that world has become a refuge from the shared one. Pay attention to how she talks about her week. Does she tell you what she did or does she give you? The highlights reel with none of the texture. When she comes home from something, does she want to tell you about it or does she seem like she's already processed it with someone else? When a woman starts processing her life with other people first, that's not her being social. That's her replacing the emotional role you used to fill. And this is the part nobody ever explains to the other person. From your side, it looks like she's pulling away for no reason. From her side, she tried to include you, and you weren't interested. Or you were half interested. You asked a question but didn't really listen to the answer. You nodded along but didn't engage. So she stopped offering. She found people who actually wanted to hear about her day, her thoughts, her plans. And slowly, without either of you noticing, those people became her inner circle, and you became the person she lives with. Not the person she shares her life with, the person she coexists next to. Here's what's happening psychologically. For a lot of people, withdrawal is a pattern that started long before their current relationship. Attachment styles formed in childhood shape how we respond to emotional intimacy as adults. But in this case, it's not just her attachment style, it's a rational response to feeling unseen. She built a world where she feels valued because the world she shares with you stopped making her feel that way. And the longer that parallel life exists, the easier it becomes to imagine a future where the parallel life is the only life. Most men don't realize how far this has gone until she mentions something major. A work opportunity, a trip, a big decision, and you realize you're the last person she told, not because she forgot, because telling you felt like an afterthought. When you go from being her first call to being her last update, the relationship is already over. You're just both still showing up to the same address. Sign 3. She stops caring about the future. This is the most obvious one once you know what to look for, but most men miss it entirely because it doesn't announce itself. She used to talk about plans, where you'd go on vacation, what you'd do next year, how you'd decorate if you ever moved. Little mentions of a future that included both of you. And then one day, she stops. When a woman who once spoke freely about what lies ahead suddenly goes quiet on the subject, it's often self-protection. If she's uncertain whether the relationship can hold what she needs, talking about the future feels pointless, or quietly painful. She doesn't talk about next summer, she talks about next week. She doesn't make long-term plans. She floats ideas but never commits. And when you bring up something months away, she gives you a vague, "we'll see," that used to mean maybe and now means "I don't know if I'll still be here." Most people get this completely wrong. They think she's being spontaneous or staying present. She's not. She's protecting herself from investing in a future she doesn't believe in anymore. And here's the piece that men almost never understand. Women don't detach from the future all at once. They detach in stages. First, she stops planning the big things. Trips, holidays, major life decisions. Those start feeling hypothetical. Then she stops planning the medium things. What you'll do next month, whose family you'll visit, whether you'll go to that wedding together. Then she stops planning the small things. What you'll do this weekend, what you'll have for dinner on Thursday, whether she'll be home when you get back. And by the time she's at that third stage, by the time even the small future feels uncertain to her, she's not wondering if the relationship will last. She's wondering when it will end. The signs she's not interested anymore are rarely loud or sudden. Research shows that 85% of women exhibit clear behavioral changes when losing interest in a partner. But those changes aren't dramatic. They're cumulative. They build slowly under the surface until one day you look up and realize the woman sitting across from you has already said goodbye in her head. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Why this happens. Because it's easy to list the signs. It's harder to explain the psychology underneath them. Women don't detach because they stopped loving you. They detach because they got tired of loving you alone. Every time she brought something up and you didn't hear it, she felt a little more alone. Every time she invited you into her world and you stayed surface level, she felt a little more alone. Every time she tried to build a future with you and you didn't engage, she felt a little more alone. And the human brain can only tolerate feeling alone in a relationship for so long before it starts making other plans. If partners stay trapped in this cycle without intervention, resentment and emotional disconnection build. Over time, this creates a relationship where both partners feel isolated and misunderstood, far from the closeness both originally wanted. So she stops explaining. She builds her own life. She stops planning a shared future. Not because she wants to punish you, because her nervous system is trying to protect her from the pain of hoping you'll show up differently and being disappointed again. And once that shift happens, once her brain decides you're not safe to hope on, reversing it is almost impossible. Because you're not just trying to fix the relationship at that point, you're trying to convince her to reopen a wound she just spent months learning how to close. Here's what that actually means from the other side, from her side. She doesn't wake up one day and decide to leave. She wakes up 100 days in a row feeling a little more disconnected, a little more certain that this is as good as it's going to get, a little more okay with the idea of being alone, because being alone can't possibly be lonelier than being in a relationship where she feels invisible, and by the time she's ready to actually leave, she's already done the emotional work of leaving. She's already grieved. She's already imagined her life without you and realized it doesn't scare her the way it used to. That's why breakups feel sudden to men but inevitable to women, because men are experiencing the ending in real time. Women experienced it 6 months ago. They've just been waiting for the right moment to say it out loud. Now, let me be clear about something. This isn't about blame. This isn't about men being clueless or women being impossible to please. This is about two people who stop being able to reach each other. And when that happens, when the gap gets too wide, one person usually makes the call to stop trying. And in most cases, that person is her. Not because she's less committed, because she's more aware. She's tracking the relationship in a way most men aren't. She's noticing the small shifts, the emotional distance, the moments where connection used to happen and now doesn't. And once you understand that she's been watching the relationship decline while you were assuming everything was fine, the signs stop being mysterious. They start being obvious. She stops explaining herself because explaining hasn't worked. She builds a separate life because the shared life stopped nourishing her. She stops planning the future because she doesn't see you in it anymore. And the tragedy is that most of this is preventable, not all of it. Some relationships aren't meant to last. But most of the time, if a man actually noticed the first sign, the moment she stops explaining, and instead of relaxing into the silence he asked why, the whole trajectory could shift. Because that moment, that quiet moment where she stops fighting for what she needs, is the last moment where she's still hoping you'll notice. She's testing to see if you care enough to ask why things got quiet. And if you do, if you notice and you show up and you actually listen, most women will give you another chance. But if you don't, if you just enjoy the peace and assume she worked through whatever was bothering her, you're confirming everything she feared, that you're not paying attention, that you don't care enough to notice when she's struggling, that she's on her own. And once a woman feels like she's on her own inside a relationship, leaving is just a formality. So if you're reading this and you recognize even one of these signs, don't assume it's too late. But don't assume you have unlimited time either. Ask her, not in a defensive way, not in a way that's designed to prove she's overreacting. Ask her because you genuinely want to know what's happening in her world, what she's feeling, what she needs. And then, and this is the part most men skip, actually listen to the answer. Don't defend. Don't explain why she shouldn't feel that way. Don't minimize, just listen. Let her know you hear her, and then show her through your actions that what she said mattered. Because the difference between a woman who's emotionally checked out and a woman who's still fighting for the relationship isn't always visible from the outside. But from the inside, from her side, the difference is everything. And once you understand what you're actually looking at, once you stop mistaking silence for peace, you'll see the signs long before it's too late.